I don't think any film quite gives the true feeling of horror camp that A House of a Thousand Corpses does. Between Captain Spaulding, a clown selling fried chicken at a gas station with a true crime ride, a man being turned into a mermaid, and an entire theatrical performance carried out by a sadistic necro hot body Sherry Moon. But the film we know as A House of a Thousand Corpses truly is only a third of the original story. After so many footage cuts lost to time, it makes you wonder what it could have been. What it never was. This is about the lost story of House of a Thousand Corpses. Again. I feel like most horror fanatics are very familiar with House of a Thousand Corpses and the entire franchise as a whole, but what if I told you this original telling never even had Dr. Satan in it? But first, we gotta take a look at the guy who got us all here in the first place, Robert Zombert Rob Zombie. He originally came out into notoriety as the frontman for the heavy metal band White Zombie, which led to his solo album Hellbilly Deluxe in 1998, which would sell 3 million copies in the US, carrying two of arguably his most famous tracks, Living Dead Girl and Dragula. This would lead to him creating a haunt house with Universal in 1998 under the title The Thrilling Chilling World of Rob Zombie in conjunction with his album, and the house was based on tracks from it. This was supposed to be the depiction of going through Rob's mind, even with you walking through in a giant amalgamation of his mouth and head to enter said thing. This started his creative endeavors with Universal. This was a really great success, and he was obviously working well with Universal, so this led to him continuing to start haunt house ideas with him, and he ended up coming up with the concept of House of a Thousand Corpses. Obviously, a haunt house at the time, not the movie quite yet. In this, he got the basis of ideas, think about the family dynamics from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Spider Baby, which is heavily underrated. If you have not seen Spider Baby, go watch Spider Baby. But Rob realized he was really cooking with something when he started coming up with these ideas of this family and this messed up house, and that it's a family of murderers, and he realized what he really had here. Creating a haunt house ended up him getting in the room with the Universal executives, and he wanted to pitch the concept of them creating a fully fledged out House of a Thousand Corpses movie in conjunction with the haunt house, which at this time, this is only about the second or third ever Universal Horror Nights. So the concept of having a horror movie have its haunt house tied in was pretty revolutionary. Nowadays, that is like the bread and butter of Universal Horror Nights, is having, houses based after horror movies, but that wasn't a thing at the time, let alone creating one in conjunction for a movie coming up created by the same company. So Universal absolutely loved the idea of this. Obviously, they didn't know how crazy Rob Zombie is, so they gave him about $3 to $4 million budget to create the film. Obviously, as you may know or you may not know, Universal is not the company that ended up putting out the film. So what happened? There is one group I would refer to as quite literally the biggest op for horror movie creators and honestly most good movie creators, and that is the MPAA. The MPAA is the Motion Picture Association. They are the ones who watch and screen your films and deem what the ratings are, from G, PG, PG-13, R, all the way to NC-17. NC-17 is quite literally the kiss of death for a film. NC-17 essentially bars you from being able to really screen it in theaters anywhere, leading to not really getting box office revenue. Who's going to fund and create a movie that you can't make any money back on or kind of have anyone really see? Now, how do you get an NC-17 rating, you asked me? I heard you, I got you. An NC-17 rating typically comes from the excessive use of unnecessarily violence and adult activity, which is quite literally the bread and butter of House of a Thousand Corpses. Even during the initial filming, Rob was doing certain scenes twice. One with gore effects he wanted, and another version without them. He was using lighting tricks to create this sense of more violence, red lights and strobing, with Rob himself even knowing just how far he was pushing the envelope with House of a Thousand Corpses. So this led to, after one screening of it being 90 minutes long, receiving an NC-17 label anyway that Universal executives themselves would state, "We made a commitment to Rob to allow him full creative control. The resulting film is a significant accomplishment for Rob, yet there is a visceral tone and intensity we did not imagine from the printed page." This obviously led to them choosing to not release the film in 2001 as originally stated or attempted to. They did do The Haunt House, but it was relabeled as American Nightmare. And the general public had no concept of a House of Thousand Corpses or the characters at the time, but when you pull up what the American Nightmare house looked like, you can pull these immediate grabs to House of a Thousand Corpses and tell this was absolutely created in conjunction what would have been the film. Because of just how absolutely extreme this was, Universal themselves knew there's no way to just splice it up and sell it or quite literally use this for anything at all, and just took it as a total loss and had it shelved until Rob was able to buy the rights back to House of a Thousand Corpses from them. A month after buying the rights back, Rob said to MTV, "Exactly what the adults are disgusted by is what the kids are going to stand up and cheer for." And that would prove excessively true, with quite literally no material or advertisements for this film at all. There was such an insane hype for the release of the film House of Thousand Corpses online. All people knew was Rob Zombie made it, and it was deemed far too extreme for release. And one of the few things you can get a bunch of horror weirdos, especially on the internet in the early 2000s, to hype around is something deemed too extreme to release to the general public. So there were whole forums and sites rallying about the concept of being able to ever get this film out. And obviously, Rob still wanted to release his film, so he would go on to a second production company trying to get this thing released. But this is actually where we start seeing so many lost footage come from this film, and it would actually take a third production company to ever release this film. In February 2001 was when Universal was shown this original 90-minute draft of the film, which to this day is completely gone. No one even explicitly knows what was the 90-minute draft, but one of the biggest things we know is that we lost an entire character out of the film, Miss Bunny, played by Jean Carmen. Little is known about what part she played in the plotline, but what we do know is she had an off-the-wall, bizarre attraction house similar to Spalding, except a lot more welcoming and with definite pizzazz. Miss Bunny was a taxidermy puppeteer hosting Miss Bunny Hollywood Review, where she would reenact famous movie scenes using dead animals, notably from extremely rare skin caps of this using a cat and a squirrel to act out the last scene of Casablanca. Like a lot of things that happens in cutting and editing of films, it seems like Miss Bunny was just cut to streamline the basis of the plot. Obviously, we have no clue what she would have played, and Rob is not, really privy, especially over the years, to inform anyone of original plot lines to House of a Thousand Corpses or what part she played, but in my head, this makes total sense fitting in. If we're already going on this bizarre road trip attraction trip, which was literally why everyone was in the car, Chris Hardwick and everyone was in the car on the basis of doing this road trip and talking about bizarre attractions. So it'd make total sense to me if they stopped at Bunny's before they got to Scalding. So again, we have no clue where she came from, but in my head, I'm assuming they stopped at her, and then they stopped at Spalding later on. But I think Miss Bunny would have been really neat and cool, because there is this element of glamour in House of a Thousand Corpses, this, theatrical pizzazz in it. So having, a retired weird show lady puppeteering taxidermy just really fits in my world. Along with Miss Bunny's subplot line, we had another one was completely cut, but this one we do see inklings in what we do see of House of a Thousand Corpses. This was about the skunk ape. If you're unfamiliar with the skunk ape, as someone who lived in Florida for, unfortunately, the majority of my life, it is essentially the Floridian Bigfoot. It is a giant Bigfoot guy, but he lives in the swamp, so he's a skunk ape. I don't know. I don't know. Once again, it's not clear what this plotline was. I'm gonna assume this was another tourist attraction stop, or maybe a neighbor, some sort of interaction, because you yourself, I'm gonna see if I can try to catch it and screen record it, but you can catch in House of a Thousand Corpses, the final draft, you can hear someone go, "I'm gonna kill that skunk ape," when they're doing the flashing pan scenes on that house and having that kind of weird trippy moment. And this is leftover from original footage that they had on one of the first secondary cuts of this film. Other than just being cut outright of the film, our characters would face a lot of censorship in our final release of the film. The one that got the most of this was Baby Firefly, played by Sherry Moon, Rob Zombie's wife. The original one apparently had a hell of a lot of necrophilia, and Baby acting out a hell of a lot of necrophilia. I would argue we got glimpses of it in our final cut, but I guess the original was way more intense. And a lot of the original was filmed on an 8mm camera by Rob in his house, in his basement, and, it's his wife, so I'm sure he's getting a bunch of crazy footage, and a lot of this 8mm footage actually is in the final cut. The film and the opening, if you see those videos of Sherry getting all cozy with a skeleton, that was was part of our original cut, and it was just, a lot more intense, and Universal was not having it. Just to reiterate again, this is not just, like, cut footage. Like, we can't pull this up. Like, I can't pull this up and show you like I can with a lot of Hellraiser cut footage. This is lost. This is all just gone. Like, this does not exist, and because of the time frame, I'm of the inkling that, like, we'll never see this. This will never exist. Rob himself even said, I don't think it will be released, because I don't think anyone knows where any of it is, truthfully. Even when they put together the DVD, which was 13 years ago, we couldn't find anything because they had shot 200 interviews in the time since the shoot. We had behind-the-scenes stuff, makeup tests, all these different things, and nobody could find it. It was all lost. That's why I think whatever exists is all that's ever going to exist. But why were all of these cuts made? Well, Rob, after the Universal turned it down, he went around shopping production company houses. He eventually started getting to the talks with MGM, telling them he was happy to make whatever cuts to try to get an R-rated. Rob wanted to put this movie out. At the time for him, this was probably like one of his most important projects, which, of course, now if you know, Rob hates House of a Thousand Corpses, but isn't that kind of always how it is? And once again, what exactly cuts were made for what production company and why, we don't know, because he keeps quite literally everything close to his chest about this. But one of the things we do know is that after Universal turned down, this actually led to him being able to add more into it and take things out. And this led to the creation of Fish Boy. If you're unfamiliar or just need a little refresher about House of a Thousand Corpses, Fish Boy is when Rainn Wilson, more commonly known as Dwight from The Office, is killed and gaffed into a fish boy, into a mermaid, and presumably would be put up in Captain Spaulding's gift shop in, the oddity, weird, funky area. If you're unfamiliar with a gaff, it is an old sideshow circus thing where you would create essentially fake cryptid out of taxidermy, like mishing and mashing multiple animals together. I believe Fish Boy is obviously inspired by the Fiji mermaid, which I believe is just a monkey and a fish to be a mermaid. But for me, Fish Boy is one of the most iconic aspects of a House of a Thousand Corpses, and I think it is for a lot of people. So to find out this was like never originally in the plan at all is a little wacky. Along with this, one of our main focal points of this entire film, Dr. Satan, was not originally supposed to be in the movie. It's hard to find exact clarification on how much of him was never a part of this, because once again, Rob Zombie does not talk about this and doesn't want to. But obviously, we end up with Dr. Satan, and originally, when Dr. Satan was added in, which I believe Dr. Satan is added in post-Universal, from just the things I've gathered extensively looking at things. I could be totally wrong, but I think that it was added post-Universal, and Dr. Satan was actually going to be revealed to be Grandpa, which I hate, because of all the horror movie grandpas, obviously Texas Chainsaw Grandpa's like S tier. I really don't like the House of a Thousand Corpses grandpa, but that's just me. But originally, he was supposed to be revealed to be Dr. Satan later in the movie, probably around dinner time when, Run Rabbit Run starts occurring. It is said that the entire visuals and everything of Dr. Satan was added to the end of the film after they acquired more funding, so possibly this was something Rob always wanted, but just knew, like, how much money would have gone into the effects of creating Dr. Satan that it just wasn't even viable and was able to add him at the end. Either way, Dr. Satan is quite literally, like, I think the fundamental aspect of House of a Thousand Corpses at the end of the day. As I just touched on, Rob being in talks with MGM to release the movie, he was so excited that he accidentally slipped up on an MTV movie show while talking with Ben Affleck. I don't know why MTV was like, put Rob Zombie, Ben Affleck next to each other, but whatever. He himself stated, apparently they have no morals over there. They're happy for some blood. MGM did not take this joke lightly and were so upset that they shut down all operations of the film working with Rob completely. They were so offended by this statement, even though obviously he's saying in a lighthearted manner, that they shut everything down. According to Rob, they went berserk, never called him or any of the producers. They had assistants call the editing room, just calling for them all to leave and never come back. MGM even spoke out saying they never planned to distribute the film in the first place. Even though, as Rob said, they were paying all of the bills on finishing the film, they were editing and funding it, so there's kind of no way for them to try to claim that they never had any intentions of being involved in this film. So Rob has now lost two major production companies that were allegedly completely ready to release this film for him, so he started working under the idea of just doing a self-release. But one final company would step up and be the ones to have balls big enough to release House of a Thousand Corpses, and at the time, it was a very small production company known as Lionsgate. All Lionsgate required of Rob was to cut it enough so the MPAA would allow them to just get an R rating and actually be able to release it into the theaters, seemingly backing up Rob's creative endeavor on this entire project. Lionsgate was absolutely willing to take the chance on A House of a Thousand Corpses, mainly due to the fact that they just saw great success in releasing American Psycho, which arguably was way too extreme for other production companies to release at the time. So they were willing to take a risk and push that envelope just a little bit further with Rob and getting $16.8 million in the box office and creating a long-lasting horror cult classic. As I've touched on, I believe House of a Thousand Corpses is a very extremely beloved horror film to horror fanatics, even though, you'll meet guys who absolutely hate the film. It is just it's so good. I love a brainless horror movie. Don't make me think about it. Sometimes I don't want to watch an A24 movie. I don't want to understand the complexities and double entendres of this artistic film every time. I want to put on House of a Thousand Corpses, and I want to drink cheap beer, and I want to read Fangoria. Horror doesn't need to be sophisticated. Sophisticated horror is great, but there is something so goddamn fun about a campy, cheesy horror movie. And knowing this is just a fraction of what this film was does eat at me a bit, and it eats at a lot of people. A lot of people are curious about what was the possibility of this original 90-minute film. In March of 2003, the full uncut version that Rob had available was shown at the Mar del Plata Film Festival to those attending. This had a runtime of 105 minutes versus the theatrical release being only 90. There is a pirated copy of the film put online a month before the theater release, but this pirated copy was 103 minutes. It is completely unclear if it was a shorter copy of the unreleased one shown at the film festival or a copy of the theater released one with some sort of filler. This specific pirated copy is also completely lost to time. There's also a few alternative scenes that are lost to a degree. We have a little bit more stuff surrounding it. It all really harps onto the end of the film. Like, Rob Zombie himself has shared a few stuff cheekily on Instagram, talking about how originally, when Jenny gets picked up, it wasn't going to be the convertible with Spaulding and Otis in the back grabbing her. Originally, it was going to be this branded Captain Spaulding ice cream truck, which they made and unfortunately never used for anything. And along with that in the caption, he alludes to the fact that wouldn't be Otis in the back waiting to grab her, like we do see in the end of House of a Thousand Corpses. Along with this, there was promo photos of zombies, like the Dr. Satan zombies, like attacking Jerry, or Chris Hardwick's character, like ripping him apart and attacking him instead of Dr. Satan doing like the brain surgery on him, which we kind of have no frame of reference on what these pictures were, if it was just for promo or if it was part of a scene that was cut out completely. It's a little unclear on that. But I can't lie, the hauntingness that I get sometimes about lost footage of horror films, like between Hellraiser 2, House of a Thousand Corpses, All American Massacre, like there is so much cut stuff that we just cannot pull up, that I know it's so like minuscule and doesn't even like do anything, but I if you can't tell, there's something wrong with me where I want to know everything. So if I can't know it, I bothers me. And there is something about every time I kick on House of a Thousand Corpses now, I'm always like, where would a Miss Bunny be? What would have Sherry actually been doing? Like, there's just, it haunts me. It haunts me to an insane degree, and I must know as much as I can. And unfortunately, this is kind of as much as I can dig up about House of a Thousand Corpses. But if you made it all the way to the end of this video and watched me rambled and retelled of ancient yesteryears of horror internet forums that I've regaled to you, thanks so much. I really do appreciate it. Once again, back at square one. Share my videos. Best thing you can do for me is sharing my videos and liking, commenting, and subscribing, so make sure to do all those three. Do you like House of a Thousand Corpses? Do you hate A House of a Thousand Corpses? It is weirdly a bit divisive. I love it, but I know a lot of, like, hardcore horror fans that, like, really do not like it. So, make sure to tell me down below if you like House of a Thousand Corpses, if you knew any of this, if you didn't know any of this. If you're here before the incident and you've seen this already, make sure to let me know too. And with that, one final time, thanks for liking, commenting, and subscribing. Follow me on all social media platforms, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, under Darby Valentine. And I will see you next time. Have a good one. And if you like this video, oh god, what video might you like? Maybe you like my video about the deep dive into cannibalism. With that, once again, goodbye!